We can send a guy to the moon. We can come up with all kinds of military stuff, and we can't build low-income and affordable housing? Really? I'm Senator Bernie Sanders. This is Tech Support Oligarchy. The first question, what does Bernie mean by oligarchy? Now, that's a pretty easy question. I wrote a book on that one. Oligarchy means that you live in a nation in which a handful of extraordinarily wealthy people have enormous wealth and power. And with that wealth and power, they not only control the economy, they not only significantly control the media, but they also control our political system to a large degree because we have a corrupt campaign finance system that allows billionaires to spend as much as they want on campaigns. So, bottom line, never before in American history have so few held so much wealth, so much power. That is oligarchy. And this question is from Reddit. Why do we call Russian billionaires oligarchs while we call US ones entrepreneurs? We don't like Putin for a number of very valid reasons. The guy is a crook, a mass murderer, started a terrible war. There's a lot of reasons to dislike him and where Russia is right now. And after the Soviet Union fell, Putin and his friends cleaned up. They took over a lot of the state-owned industries and they became oligarchs, and everybody knows that. So it's easy to put a negative term on a country that we are not friendly with, that we don't like for a lot of valid reasons. When it comes back home, it's a little bit more difficult. But I think people are catching on. When you live in a society where the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 93%, when you're living in a country where one guy, Mr. Musk, now owns more wealth than the bottom 53% of American households, when you are living in a society where we do have more or less free elections, you can run for office, but somebody else has the freedom to spend all kinds of money to defeat you. So you're going to have a democracy, but it's going to be pretty hard to win elections when the oligarchs have the money. And they spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure government represents their interests. So the reason we don't call what we have an oligarchy, and by the way, more and more people are, is this is our country, and it's much easier to be negative about another country. Victory Wing. I truly cannot fathom why billionaires want to replace the entire workforce with AI. If no one is getting paid, no one is buying your shit, and we're all going to be broke. Victory, that's a very interesting thought. I don't think these guys stay up nights worrying about you or anybody else, as a matter of fact. And I don't know that they're doing long-term thinking about the consequences of their actions. AI has the potential to wipe out tens of millions of jobs in the next decade. We have people like Jeff Bezos, one of the wealthiest guys on earth, putting together a fund of $100 billion to do what? To automate factories and warehouses. That means there ain't going to be any more manufacturing jobs in America or warehouse jobs. It will all be done by robots. It is a massive transformation of society led by the wealthiest people in the world who could care less about you or my grandkids or anybody else. They're in it for more and more wealth and more power. And what I'm spending 24/7 now is trying to stop them in any way we can. We are supporting a national moratorium on data centers. We've introduced legislation calling for an AI American Sovereign Wealth Fund, which would allow the public to have half the seats on all of the major AI companies to stop what Victory is worried about, massive job loss in this country. Debbie Fates asks, isn't there a limit to political donations, or can billionaires just buy elections? Well, Debbie, the answer is billionaires can just buy elections. As a result of the disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision 15, 16 years ago, essentially what the Supreme Court said is that the wealthiest people in this country have the freedom to spend as much money as they want on elections. And what has evolved over the time is a structure called super PACs. So it's not an individual, Mr. Jones can't put $100 million into a campaign. You do it through super PACs, political organizations. So they put as much money as they want into a super PAC, and that super PAC does the political work. Elon Musk himself put $290 million into electing Trump. Democrats have their billionaires as well. So all in all, you got a really corrupt campaign finance system, and it's a long, long way from the democracy that I believe in, that most Americans believe in, which is one person, one vote, where campaigns are about candidates actually debating the issues facing the American people. So today what's about is billionaires and their super PACs running ugly 30-second ads, trying to destroy opponents. And that is something we've got to change. So to the top of my list politically, we're not going to bring back the changes that we need as a nation unless we get rid of this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision and get rid of super PACs as well. Is it inevitable that the US will have a revolution with wealth inequality getting worse? When we were in school, we learned about the Gilded Age. Remember the Gilded Age? Rockefeller and Carnegie and Mellon and all those guys, they were incredibly rich. The situation today is much more unequal than it was during the Gilded Age. It is worse than it has ever been in American history. Some 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. I know something about that. Today, people are living under enormous stress. How they're going to feed their kids, how they're going to pay the rent, how they're going to send their kid to childcare when the cost of childcare is so expensive. What happens if somebody in the family gets sick? How do you afford to go to the hospital? You have huge deductibles, co-payments. A lot of people have no insurance at all. So you're living in a situation where people on top are doing phenomenally well and working families are struggling. And I think what you're seeing is politically more and more people just beginning to start talking about that issue. Do we want to live in a society where one guy, Mr. Musk, owns more wealth than the bottom half of American society? If we are the richest country on earth, why is it that we're the only major nation not to guarantee health care to all people? Why don't we have the best educational system in the world? Why do kids have to go tens and tens of thousands of dollars in debt to get a college education? Why are some 20 million households spending half of their income for housing? Doesn't make sense to me. We can't raise the minimum wage to a living wage so all workers are earning a decent wage. Strengthen the union movement in America. People at the bottom are seeing what's happening, getting angrier and angrier. The difficulty is we live at a time when you have a corporate media that is not going to discuss these issues very significantly. We live in a political system where these guys own many of the members of the Congress. But I think things are changing and people are catching on. Marissa Mendez asks, can someone smart who actually works in economics or something tell us what the heck is going to happen? There are no jobs, more being eliminated by the day, housing is insane, AI is ramping up. Seriously, what does the future look like? How do we bounce back from this? What will it take? There is very little doubt that American society is in decline. The people on top are doing phenomenally well, but as you indicate, if you're an ordinary person, you go to the grocery store, price of food is going up, good, healthy food for your kids. People think it's just New York or LA. It's all over this country. It is Burlington, Vermont. Price of housing is skyrocketing. For young people today, the economists tell us the first home that they are going to buy, if they ever get to buy a home, will be, I think, 12 years later than their parents. Parents were able to get a home, I think, at 28. They're going to get their first home at 40. Why is that? Why are we the only country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people as a human right, despite spending twice as much per capita as most other countries? Why the cost of prescription drugs so very high? Why do kids have to go deeply into debt just to get a higher education? And the answer is you got a government that is controlled by extremely wealthy and greedy people who want more and more for themselves and could care less about the needs of working people. So Trump, in his so-called big, beautiful bill, the worst piece of legislation in modern history, gave $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%. Then he threw 15 million people off of the health care that they have. How do we bounce back from that? And the answer is really not hard. And that's what some of us are working on right now. We have to organize politically at the grassroots level. They have unbelievable and endless amounts of money, but we have the people. And when people get organized, when they get mobilized, when they participate in elections, we can win, and we have been winning. In the last 6-7 months, starting with Zohran Mamdani in New York and going throughout the country, you're seeing people never ran for office in their lives, winning primaries against Democratic establishments. But we have to know what's at stake, and we have to know the path forward. And bottom line, it is two things. We must take on Trump, who is the most dangerous president in the history of the United States. He is working for his fellow oligarchs He does not believe in the Constitution or the rule of law. He lies all the time. He has gotten us into a horrible war in Iran and on and on. But we also have to understand how Trump gets elected. And the answer is that millions of working class people looked at the alternative. They looked at the Democratic Party and said, what the hell are you doing? You guys had power. Did you create health care for all? Did you raise my wages? Did you build affordable housing that I need? Did you make the schools better? And the answer is no. So the struggle that we as progressives are engaged in are on two separate fronts. Number one, we're going to lead the effort against Trump and his disastrous policies. But number two, we have to transform the Democratic Party completely from being a party dominated by the wealthy and the powerful to a party of the working class and young people in this country. And that's what we're working on. That is the way out of this disaster. You are living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. We can do extraordinary things. All people can have decent paying jobs. We can lower the work week. We can have health care for all people. We can have the best educational system in the world. This is not radical thinking. We can do these when you got a government that works for ordinary people and is not owned by the billionaires. Thanks.